Well, a lot of you really seem to enjoy the Azalea Armory deck upgrade video I did, so I made one for Kayo, and I'm actually going to utilize this in my own locals. So if you purchased a Kayo Armory deck and you're looking to see about upgrading the deck and giving it its best, let's go ahead and dive into a few upgrade paths and end up really giving you an idea about how efficient this hero is right out of the box. Welcome on in, Dragonfolk. It's such a pleasure to have you all here today. It is another Armory deck upgrade video. This one is going to be hopefully not as long as the last one, but I do like to go pretty in depth when I'm talking about cards. I like to also admit that Brute has not been my first class. It's something I've always wanted to attempt to learn, but it really wasn't until the consistency of Kayo that I felt a little bit more comfortable trying to give it a shot here. So with the Kayo Armory deck, if you haven't already known, the Kayo Armory deck, which you can find at your local game store. If you can't find it there, I'm sure it's online somewhere. They tend to retail about $40. You can go ahead and start there, go through the cards, learn a little bit about the hero itself, and then move forward from there. But what I wanted to talk about today is some upgrades that we can do to it. Now, a disclaimer before we start, because I have them all set up into 3 different upgrades, all ranging in different pricing, right? So we essentially have added an amount into the deck, and then I also have something here for further upgrades in case you want to put more money into the game of Flesh and Blood. So this is the Armory deck at its base level. Here on FaBrary, it says this deck costs $10 on TCG Player. That is because when you look at the pricing on TCG Player, the new cards that came in the set, Hide Tanner, Savage Sash, all the Strength Rules, all and the Run Roughshods, do not have prices listed on FaBrary. Not sure why that is. It's like that with all of the Armory decks on FaBrary, so keep that in mind whenever you're building a list. This does not cost $10. It'll cost you $40 for the entirety of the deck. And then I've just built upon that number. So let's go ahead and take a quick rundown here of the original Kayo deck and what it is in its core supposed to do. Kayo has the ability to where his attacks have +1 power if they are anywhere beside the combat chain. The combat chain is definitely the time, you're going to be sending out these attacks, or even if you're blocking with them, their power will not be +1. So that is very important to note when you are looking into this deck, because you do want to make sure that you are providing a solid amount of power. And I don't want everybody to think that everything in your deck has +1 power, even when you're attacking with it, because that is far too powerful. How many times can I say powerful in a stinking video? Anyway, Kayo has that ability to where you have that. He also has the ability of you only have one weapon. So we'll go over our weapon in a bit, but you can only have one weapon. He's only got one arm, but his third ability on his hero power says the first time you discard a card with 6 or more power during each of your action phases, create a might token. So creating a might token you can stack these essentially, and then at the beginning of your turn, all your might tokens pop, and then your next attack this turn gets +1 for each might token. So if you have 3 might tokens at the beginning of your turn, they all get destroyed, and then your next attack will get +3. So a goal here is to consistently get at least +1 power, which is funny because I technically said that all of your attacks don't have +1 power, but like in a situation like this, you're usually going to be discarding a 6. And if you're discarding a 6 on your turn, you're going to be getting a might token, which means that at least one of your attacks on your turn will have +1 power, which is really cool. So with that being said, let's go dive into the armor that you get for this. And we'll just go over this quickly again. There's a whole video talking about how this Armory deck works, but I'll go a quick rundown here. We have Knucklehead for the headpiece. Simple. It is Temper 2, and then sometimes you get to do a crazy thing with it. Then you have Savage Sash, a brand new chess piece for brutes. You can destroy this, and attack action cards with 6 or more power cost you 1 resource less to play this turn. So gives you a lot of room to make a pretty wide chain link and kind of go in for the win there. Hide Tanner, also very, very fun. This is a lot like the legendary we'll see later on, but High Tanner, it blocks for 1, has Battle Worn, and then when you discard a random card with 6 or more power, you can destroy this, and if you do, create 2 Might tokens. And then Beaten Trackers, which is just Scabskin Leathers at home. You can, at any point when you discard a random card with 6 or more power, you can destroy Beaten Trackers to gain 1 action point. This is normally like a last-ditch effort, or if you can really get a super big, powerful attack off, this is normally when you're going to be using something like Beaten Trackers, but the fact it gives you Battle Worn 2 is really good. So just right off the base here, considering if you don't use any of their abilities, you have 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 armor in total in just this package alone. All of them with Battle Worn or at least Temper. So you're going to be able to block a lot. Utilizing, I would say you're probably going to be blocking fully with Knucklehead and probably not wanting to use his ability unless you're a true gamer. If you're a true gamer, you roll this when you are at your weakest and you hope for a 6. Because if you end up drawing up to 6 cards at the end of your turn, you might as well just be the victor there. So Knucklehead, very interesting RNG there, and then Savage Sash, you're not going to want to you're going to want to get that 2 block out of the way, but you're probably not going to want to block with that 1. You're probably going to want to wait till a pretty nice go wide turn where you can utilize a bunch of those free resources into those attacks. So let's go ahead, double check into the list here. The whole point of the deck here is that every card in the deck, according to Kayo's hero power, has 6 power, which means that if you are utilizing any of the abilities like Pulping or like Savage Beatdown or like Bare Fangs and Wild Ride, they have you draw a card and discard a 6, or at least discard a 6 power card, right? You have to discard a 6 power card in order for something to happen. But every card in your deck, even these blues that say 5 power, are 6 power within your deck. So, and within your hand. So if they get discarded, then you end up getting the effect of the card itself. So this is what they call a no-miss KO deck. Every card in here has an attack value of 6 or higher theoretically, and that allows for your hero power and also all of these effects to be able to go off without a hitch. You don't have to worry about a miss and a feels bad and worrying about the RNG that is Brute. This is a great way to go ahead and get started there. So without going over any of the cards in here, because we're going to go over the cards I take out and put in, we're going to go ahead and move on to our next part of the list here. So let's say you're enjoying playing this hero. You're giving it a shot. You're trying out some new things. And you're like, you know what? I do kind of want to upgrade this hero and see what they're about. Let's go into the $50 upgrade for KO that I have put in here. Now, a lot of people might not enjoy my upgrades, right? Again, I'm not a Brute player. I'm not entirely sure on the optimal level of each card in the Brute game thing. But what I do know is what a no-miss is. So let's go over that here. In this deck, we didn't change too much as far as equipment, but we did change a lot in the main board and also added in sideboard stuff for people. The one thing this deck was lacking in the original Armory deck when you just buy it out of the box is the fact that there is no arcane barrier, no arcane damage prevention at all in the deck. And unfortunately, that means that if you were ever to go against a wizard or a runeblade, 2 classes that are now being pushed into the format pretty heavily with Rosetta coming out, you're going to want that arcane barrier. So we'll go over the arcane barrier stuff in a bit here, but I wanted to show that we made a couple changes, right? We added in 1 copy of Cast Bones. Cast Bones is a miss. So theoretically, this is a 1 miss deck now, because it is the only card in the deck that has a no power here. In theory, you want to draw into this card and then play it. Let's say you block out an entire turn, you play this. There's a reason there's only 1 of them, because when you cast 1 of them, you know that every other card in your deck is going to be a 6, so you get the full value of Cast Bones here. And the odd chance that you play a Bare Fangs, you draw a card, you shuffle the 2 cards in your hand, and then you discard that card, and it's a Cast Bones, it's at least just 1 whiff. Everybody can get 1 whiff it's okay to whiff, but the odds of you whiffing are also the same odds of you getting this card into your hand. So it's kind of the give and take here. You obviously want to see it in your hand so you can play it, but if you happen to not do that, then it is what it is. So Cast Bones we have in here, I believe we've kept Clash of Agility, because if this card does block, then you clash with your opponent. You flip a card on the top of your deck, your opponent flips a card on top of their deck, and then if your power of your card is higher than your opponent's, and then Kayo also does give your card an additional +1 power while it's in the deck, then you get an agility token, which means that your next attack at the beginning of your next turn will get Go Again. Speaking of Go Again, we actually added in Madcap Charger. Now, I might be insane, but I think this card is really good. It costs 1, it's a 3 block, comes in for 5, and it says as an additional cost to play Madcap Charger, discard a random card. And then, if the discarded card has 6 or more power, Madcap Charger has Go Again. In most cases, you're going to have a Might token, or at least 2 Might tokens at the beginning of your turn, and when you have that, that means that this might come in for 6 or 7, and because you only have hits in your deck besides that 1 Cast Bone, Madcap Charger is going to be able to come in for 6 or 7 with Go Again, because you will be discarding a 6 power card. So it's very nice. It's Wild Ride that blocks, which is really good. It's at least Wild Ride Yellow that blocks, and it is... I like it a lot, right? It's the fact that it blocks, and then you also are able to utilize its ability to almost guarantee this Go Again. I like Madcap Charger a lot, and it's a common. You don't have to work too hard to get that. Then we move into a card here, Runner Runner. Not as expensive as I thought it was going to be, which is why I put it in this $50 upgrade, but this card cares about having Go Again. So again, remember, we do have the agility tokens within the deck, and several other ways to make agility tokens. So if you're at the beginning of your turn, an agility token is destroyed, and then your next attack is going to get Go Again. You're going to start off by playing Runner Runner for 2. It'll come in for 6 damage, and it also blocks for 3, so it's on rate there. A 2-cost card that attacks for 6 and blocks for 3 is really good rate. But in this situation, because it'll be your first attack and it will gain Go Again off that agility token, this will make you another agility token for your next turn. So kind of keeps that Go Again strategy in line. Very, very nice. We then also have Savage Feast. Savage Feast is another 1-cost 6-power attack that is at additional cost to play Savage Feast, discard a random card. If the discarded card is 6 or more power, you then get to draw a card. This is a nice little finisher. It allows you to come in. Again, it's a 1 for 6, which is just like ridiculously on rate. Not on rate, that's over rate, because where this is a 2-cost 6 for 3, this is a 1-cost 6 for 3, but you have to discard a card from your hand. You're usually going to be doing that already, so just make sure you have to have a card in your hand to discard in order for you to play a card like Savage Feast. So if it's going to be at the beginning of your turn, or if you happen to have 2 cards in your hand and 1 card in 1 float in resources, you can use Savage Feast. It's a great card to utilize. Then we have Strength Rules All. This was in the main deck, the original one. This is pretty much just if it hits, you banish an attack action card in their arsenal with power less than the damage dealt this way. So again, 2, 6, 3, that's the good rate we want. But when it hits a hero, you might be able to banish a card from their arsenal if they have an attack action down there. Usually there's D-reacts in the arsenal, depending on who you're going against. But if it's a ninja, they probably don't have D-reacts or any kind of like aggressive deck. This also is great into rangers because you can hit them with that and then just be like, okay, cool, good to go. Wild Ride, again, this is in the main deck too. This is your Go Again card. Doesn't block, but does have 6 power, and you're going to be getting that effect unless you get the Cast Bones. Wreak Havoc is the same card in the main deck. This is just CNC at home, and it's still very efficient. The only difference is it doesn't block 3, it blocks 2, and they have to have a defense reaction in their arsenal. But the good news is that even if Wreak Havoc or Strength Rules All hits, you still get to see what is in their arsenal. So you have a better idea about what your opponent's play pattern is going to be when that arsenal gets hit. So Arsenal Destruction, pretty fun stuff. You like to see it. Tends to be a pretty great thing to add in there. Then we move in. So originally there were only the blue Agile windups. I added in the yellow Agile windups also. Not the absolute most efficient, but if we want to continue those go again turns, we are going to want to discard this 6 or discard this 6 to be able to get a agility token and a might token on our turn. And then we can also utilize the cool concept here with these instant discard this, create an agility token, because Mandible Claw, our weapon, gets go again if we discarded a card with 6 or more power. So pitching to play an attack with Mandible Claw for 2 resources, and then in the reaction step, you can go ahead and discard an Agile windup to give it go again before the attack resolves. So it's very, very nice. You're able to get a lot of tricks through there. People are going to go, well, it doesn't have go again, so I should be fine to just be able to take this and not have to worry about it. Or they're going to block it, assuming nothing else is going to come in, and then you go ahead and give it go again by discarding a Agile windup, and then you'll get the agility token and the might token because you discarded a 6. This will be the first discard 6 you'll have in your turn. Beast Within is a card that I added in, probably the most expensive add-in to this deck. So if it's not in budget, don't worry about it. Beast Within is great because if Beast Within's put into your graveyard from anywhere other than the combat chain, banish the top card of your deck and lose 1 life. And if it has 6 or more power, put it into your hand, otherwise repeat the process. The good news with Beast Within is that you're probably going to hit a 6. And so when you hit a 6, you're going to lose a life, but you'll go ahead and you'll get that top card into your hand. So when you discard Beast Within at random by playing something like Wild Ride or Bare Fangs or Madcap Charger or Savage Feast, you get to if you randomly discard this card, you then get to draw essentially a card and lose 1 life. So it's a net positive, and all you do is lose 1 point of life. Very, very good. It's also, again, a 6. So it counts for that no miss stuff there. Then we're keeping a lot of the blues that we had in here. Not much has changed here. I think I took out the Riled Up. Let's go over the stuff that we took out from the main deck here. So we took out Humble, we took out Rally the Rear Guard, and we took out Savage Beatdown. And then we also took out Battlefront Bastion, and we took out Riled Up. Those cards got removed, and then these cards were added in. So if you guys would like, I can also add those into the maybe section down here so you know what cards to remove. I haven't done that yet, but if you'd like, I can do that for you in the future. Let me know in the comments if you want that. But now we go into the sideboard here. So this is your arcane damage prevention sideboard. You have No Fear, which is really good into big explosive turns. This is great for big crazy dominated turns or a lot of arcane damage that might be coming at you. No Fear just says, hey, banish any number of cards with 6 or more power from your hand, and then at the beginning of your end phase, return them to your hand. And the next time you would be dealt damage this turn, prevent X of that damage, where X is 2 plus the number of cards banished to play this card. So if you banish 4, you go ahead and you banish 4 cards from your hand. Let's say you play this from Arsenal. You banish 4 cards from hand. This will block out 6 damage. Now, against a dominated attack, you could probably block out with a good portion of your armor here, and then block out with a No Fear and still be able to get, to not be hit by some debilitating effect. But it's mainly for arcane damage because you don't really want to lose cards in your hand. But use it wisely. It's a really big defensive thing. You don't need to play 3 of them. 2 of them is fine. But sometimes only 1 is fine. Remember, when you do add this into your deck, you are adding another miss. So keep that in mind when you are trying to play into these specific heroes. Then you have your Arcane Barrier and Spell Void package. So Skullhorn is a majestic headpiece. You can destroy this, draw a card, then discard a random card and go again. That will activate things like your might generation for your hero and so on and so forth. It doesn't block for anything, but it does have Arcane Barrier 2. So if you are looking to block out some Arcane, Null Rune Boots, mainly for the Rune Blades, because you can pitch to prevent Rune Chant damage individually. So Null Rune Boot is pretty good into that. And then Spellfray Gloves, you're going to run this with Skullhorn into those big arcane, the wizards and stuff like that. You're going to run those into them because Spellfray will help you block out additional damage if you need to block out one more arcane, but only once. But Skullhorn will allow you to block out 2 arcane with the Arcane Barrier here. So just keep that in mind. There are options for you to utilize here. And they're mainly for arcane damage. So if your opponent is playing a wizard or they are playing a rune blade, sometimes even an illusionist, you might want to play something that is one of these cards to give you the overall edge into their game plan. So that is something to keep in mind if you are looking to do that. If they're really, really heavy on arcane, like super heavy, playing all 3 of these is not a terrible idea, as long as your chess piece ends up staying the same for Savage Sash here. So that is the $50 upgrade. You can see we've only added $50 to that $10 amount. So $50 gets you nearly an entirely new list with a lot of really big staple cards for Brute. You have things like Runner and Beast Within, and the 1 Cast Bones will help on those big swing turns. And then you also get your whole inventory of stuff here. So that's at $50. Now let's move on to the $100 deck. We've gone over most of the cards in the previous one, and you'll see that not much has changed here. But the one thing that has is you are no longer running Knucklehead. It's like $40 on the open market. It might be cheaper, depending. But this headpiece here, Scowling Fleshbag, you have to get this card at some point. This is how you win into those go wide decks, or at least how you get tempo back in those go wide decks, because when this card defends, you intimidate your opponent, which means they take a card from their hand, put it face down, and then at the end of their turn, they get it back. So with Scowling Fleshbag, usually people will come in with a bunch of small attacks and then save their big attack for last. But what you can do is you can just block with Scowling Fleshbag on their, third to last attack, and it'll take that card in their hand, and they'll have to intimidate it. Therefore, they don't get their combo off, right? You can take a little bit of damage, and then you get to stop their big disruptive attack at the end of their turn, and it's very, very helpful to do something like that. You even get to strip resources from people's hands. For instance, if you block with a Scowling Fleshbag, your opponent has to randomly take a card from their hand, because it is at random. They randomly take a card from their hand and they banish it face down until the end of their next turn, which means that you could have banished their attack reactions or any of their instants that may have pumped that attack. And now you're in a better standing point where they're not going to get as much disruption off, which is very, very good. So Scowling Fleshbag is the only upgrade there as far as the $100. So all I did was add $50 more to this. Scowling Fleshbag was it. It's a legendary headpiece. This is when you're starting to get kind of really into the game plan for Brute, because Scowling Fleshbag will do you some great stuff no matter who you're going against. And obviously, if you're going against a wizard, then you're probably going to go ahead and get rid of this and put on your Skullhorn instead. So that's pretty much the only change there. If you like the randomness of Knucklehead, it's also a great one because it blocks for 3 at most. And it also gives you the opportunity to possibly draw 6 cards, which is nice. But Scowling Fleshbag is a lot more consistent, and it allows you to disrupt your opponent's hand at random, which is really, really nice. It does get destroyed. This effect does only happen once because it will be destroyed after it's done blocking, but still, it's pretty good. Now we move into the $200 level here, which is the kind of the pinnacle, right? If you have gotten to this point and you're like $200 into Kayo easy peasy, the next one you're going to get into that we'll talk about, the further upgrade section, is something that I'm going to recommend to you a lot. But here, the only thing that's changed, we're no longer running Hide Tanner. We are now running Apex Bonebreaker. This has Temper 2, so much like your Savage Sash, it's got Temper 2. And then when this defends together with a card with 6 or more power, you create a Might token. So you go ahead and you block with a 3 block, and you block with Apex Bonebreaker. That blocks for 5 on the first time, and then you get to go ahead and make a Might token. And then you get to go ahead and block for 1 on the next time, and then block for 3 to block out some breakpoints, and then you get another Might token. So great Might token generation there on Apex Bonebreaker. Not a bad card to get. Again, it's another legendary. And now you're sitting at even more armor overall. You know, you've got Blade Break 2, you've got Temper 2, Battle Worn 1, and Temper 2. So pretty good stuff. But then inside the main deck, I believe the only thing I changed outside of this is we got rid of the yellow Agile Windup. And the reason we did is because we added in this card, Send Packing. Send Packing is great arsenal disruption for your opponent, or well, for you to do to your opponent, because it stops them from having this option available to them. If it's a defense reaction, or if it's some kind of instant that's going to give them a valuable defensive position, Send Packing is really great because 1, it's a 6, it blocks 3, it costs 3 for you to play it, but when it attacks a hero, banish a card from their arsenal. So it just needs to attack, it doesn't need to hit. When it attacks, you banish a card from their arsenal. And when the chain link resolves, if this didn't hit, return the banished card to its owner's hand. So now they don't have the arsenal for it, essentially. So if it hits, then it stays banished. If it doesn't hit, that banished card goes back to their opponent's hand, which means that it gives them an additional card to use from their hand to pitch for their next turn, but it is quite disruptive in case it is something like, you know, an additional value of some sort. It kind of really disrupts their overall game plan of keeping it in the arsenal. Some cards have effects that only trigger when they are played from arsenal. So if there are effects that you're looking to disrupt with that, Send Packing is a great way to go ahead and do that. So in here, again, for $200 now total, this is what your deck looks like. You've put $200 into Kayo. You've got some Send Packings, you've got Cast Bones, you've got 2 legendary pieces of equipment and a majestic piece of equipment here. Then you go ahead and you still have great blues that can be changed out theoretically, but they're not bad blues to have. And then, of course, you still have a lot of disruption and Strength Rules All and Wreak Havoc. And then also consistent go-agains in Runner and disruption and Send Packings, stuff like that. So, and no additional sideboard here. Sideboard has stayed this way. So now that we're done with $200, right? You're interested in Kayo. You're like, this is my hero. This is who I am as a player, as a person. This is what I want to really strive to be as a Flesh and Blood player, is enjoy Brute, right? Brute is something you want to put effort into playing, or at least some of these big high attack power things. What I'm going to show you now are upgrades that I suggest for Brute that you can utilize to further your game plan. These are very, very powerful cards. Not all of them are crazy expensive, but most of them are pretty dang expensive. You'll see here that compared to this $200 deck, these cards, this, what is that, 3, 6, 9, 15, 16, 17 cards are worth 3 times the amount than our $200 deck. That is because these cards are really powerful and they're really, really good in the format as of right now. So let's take a look first and foremost at their pricing, right? $90 for each copy of Command and Conquer. That's sitting about correct where it needs to be there at $90. It might go lower, depends on where you can find it, but $90 is about where it goes for each copy. Then the weakest link is about $40 a copy. Findel Spring Tunic, that chest piece, is about $100. Your swing bigs are at about $20 a piece, so $60 for a play set. Scabskin leathers, your new feet pieces, feet pieces. Your new leg pieces for Brute is going to be $30, and then Smashing Performance and Erase Face are both under $5 per card. So those aren't bad pickups if you're looking to do some further stuff there as far as disruption. But the thing with this is that Smashing Performance is really good if you're trying to disrupt heroes with items. So that's like Mechanologist is normally the case for this. It's normally Mechanologist, or even if it is something like a wizard that might use something like an E-Pot. But energy potions can be destroyed at instant speed, so it's not really going to do much. It's mainly for heroes that care about items. So Dash.io, Max, and Dash and Teklevosen, maybe even like these are opportunities. It's mainly Mechanologist that's a big problem for this. But this card can, when it attacks, you draw a card, then discard a random card. If it was 6 or more discarded this way, destroy a random item in the arena. You're not going to have items. Your opponent's going to have items. So if your opponent runs a lot of items, this is the one for you. The weakest link is a strong card. Again, it's got that 2 cost 6 for block 3. But when it hits a hero, you look at their hand and choose a card without base defense. And if you do, they discard it and you draw a card. This is great into the Mystic heroes, Enigma, Zen, and New, because they do run a lot of instant speed cards, which do not block. So if you have instants, if you're going against a deck that runs a lot of instants, whether it be even like lightning heroes that are soon to come out with Rosetta, the weakest link might still be something for you to do. Now, of course, in response to this, you could very well play those instants, if I recall correctly, but I'm not sure exactly on the layering. Somebody in the comments will have to let me know about that. We also have Swing Big. This is a card from Everfest. Card is really, really powerful. It's a 2 for 8 that blocks 3, so already much stronger than our 2 for 6s that block 3. But if it doesn't hit the defending hero, they create a Quicken token when the combat chain closes. So it's almost like a weird bait, right? Because blocking 8 damage is really, really difficult, and it also leaves you with next to no turn. But the problem here is that if you do block it out fully, then your opponent's going to get a Quicken token. A Quicken token can be utilized on any of their attack actions or weapon attacks, I believe, to go ahead and get Go Again on when they use them. So in theory, it's a trade-off, but you're not really giving them a whole lot of additional agency unless it's like a Guardian, right? Guardians, you probably don't want to play this into Guardians, but it could be efficient still because it's still a lot of damage. Because again, you are going to have a lot of might tokens in the deck. So Swing Big coming in for like 10 could be something different. And if you get Cast Bones off, Cast Bones is, you could get 6 might tokens plus an agility token. So this very well could come in for 14 damage with Go Again, which is your opponent's not going to be able to block that. And so at that point, it's really, really efficient, and it's just that really high damage ceiling. Erase Face is going to be great into these new heroes and Rosetta, but it's great into any hero that really cares about its class or talent cards, right? So when it says next Runeblade card, then it will read the Runeblade text on the bottom of the card and be like, okay, this is a Runeblade card. It's going to get the buff, right? But Erase Face says if it hits, cards and tokens they own lose all class and talent types until the end of their next turn, which essentially means that everything they have is generic and generic only. So if they have things like Aurora cares about playing lightning cards. In order to activate her ability, she needs to play lightning cards. So in that situation, it is unfortunately not going to be able to happen, right? Because they won't have that lightning talent there. And then you also have earth stuff, right? Like earth things. So for instance, you got Decompose. And again, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but if you try to decompose while under the effects of Erase Face, you don't have earth cards in your graveyard. So if you don't have earth cards in your graveyard, you can't actually decompose because they need to be 2 earth cards and an action card, not 3 action cards and 2 of them may be earth. So pretty important there. But then the big kahuna here is Command and Conquer. Command and Conquer is, again, more of that arsenal disruption. What you're going to be doing in this situation is you'll probably just remove this Wreak Havoc. and you'll put Command and Conquer in here. They do nearly the same thing. The only difference is that this one blocks for 1 more, and if it hits, they destroy all cards in the arsenal. Whereas this one, if it hits, you just get to turn a card in their arsenal face up, and then if it's a defense reaction, you get to destroy it. So nearly the same card. And then into the equipment, you have Scab Skin Leathers, which is another legendary piece for brutes. I'm not in love with this card as far as you. By this point, I expect you to be a pretty veteran brute, right? A pretty well-seasoned brute and know the power of Scab Skin Leathers. But the real reason I like it more than Beaten Trackers is because it can block for 3 as opposed to blocking for 1. And then you might get lucky and get 2 action points from Scab Skin Leathers. Might. So it's a big risk rolling for Scab Skins, but I tell you, when you roll anything besides a 1, it's at least a feels good. So a 1 out of 6 chance for you to feel kind of bad about playing Scab Skin Leathers, I guess theoretically it's not that bad of a turnaround. And then Findell Spring Tunic. This is, I like Savage Sash a lot because it is, well designed into brute specifically. You get the power here, and then you also get to make your stuff cost less. But Findell Spring Tunic gives you a free resource pretty much every 3 turns, right? You gain an energy counter every turn until you're at 3. You cannot go above 3. You're at 3. And then at any point at instant speed, you can remove those counters to gain a resource. So this is great when you're looking at cards like Madcap Charger, right? Like any of the 1 cost stuff, right? You have Madcap Charger, which costs 1. Savage Feast, which costs 1. You have I know there are some other ones. Run Roughshod, which costs 1. And even if you only have a red in your hand, right? You've blocked with everything else and you've got a red in your hand that doesn't have a block value that you couldn't have blocked with. You can at least pitch that red and then that 1 resource to attack with a runner, or you can attack with a Bear Fangs, or you can attack with a Strength Rules All, or a Wild Ride, right? However you plan to do it, it gives you that free additional resource, which is really great because over the course of the game, you essentially gain somewhere between like 5 to 7 resources if you are using it frequently. So it is important to have that. But again, these cards are expensive. So you do not need to worry about any of that. If you are looking to stay on a budget and $200 is all you are willing to put into a deck, that is fine, right? $40 for the deck, $200 on top of it. You have a really, really great Armory deck for you to go to your Armory and just continue hit and face. Brute players, you will see that I did not add in Blood Rush Bellow. Non-brute players, you don't know what that is. The reason I didn't add it in here is because I am trying to keep it to the core level of what it is, which is a no-miss deck. That's why I did not add anything like Reckless Swing or additional Cast Bones. As you grow as a brute player, you will determine what your rate of success is in most cases. And Blood Rush Bellow is a really, really great card. As a matter of fact, it's even better now considering all of the draw card bans that just happened in Classic Constructed. But I do believe that even still, it's not a card that is absolutely necessary for your deck, and therefore I don't need to recommend it to you. If other brute players are looking to recommend you brute things and Blood Rush Bellow works for you, that's awesome. If you don't like the concept of whiffing, then you can stay away from it. You can still win games without the card in the deck, but it is a quite powerful card if you do happen to come across it, and it's like $5, so it's pretty inexpensive when it comes to a card to add into the deck if you're just trying to get a little bit more additional damage into your play pattern. But that's all I've got here. We're 40 minutes into this video, and that's already far longer than I expected. Hopefully this gave you some insight into Kayo and how this is going to work out. I know it is very, very interesting. I kind of just found a lot of the brute staples and generic staples that I know I would like to run, and they had to fit that criteria, right? It either had to be a 5-power attack or a 6-power attack, and then it had to have some kind of ability to gain more or discard cards. That is just overall the general concept. There are cards inside the deck, again, that do not block. Wild Ride, Bear Fangs, Pulping, those cards do not block. And that is a very, very big feels bad for if you are trying to block out your opponent. But at the end of the day, those are cards that you also want to prioritize in playing. So if you have no blocks in hand and you have to block with a bunch of cards from your hand to prevent some damage, at least try to make sure that you're swinging back with that big, powerful no block card, because you're going to be able to get a lot of value off of it. So no blocks, play them. Don't try to defend with them, because obviously you can't. And then anything that's got, most of the cards in the deck have 3 block, except for the agile windups. So most of the cards block for 3, so you have a fairly good blocking potential. You have a lot of armor that blocks really well as well. So keep that in mind when you are playing Kayo. But I certainly hope this helped. I know my Armory deck upgrades has helped out a lot of people, and I hope this is a great way for you to understand that you can still play these Armory decks at a fairly low budget level. I mean, personally, like in the overall economy state of things, $200 is not budget, but I do believe that even at $200, it's still fairly budget compared to the, you know, when you add in those last upgrades I showed you, you're looking at about an $800 to $900 deck compared to your $200 deck. So in a way, you're saving a little bit in the long run. But if you wanted to become a veteran Flesh and Blood player and you really enjoy the Brute class and you really want this to be like your big thing, is the class that you really enjoy, then you can take a look at these cards and probably get them for maybe cheaper than what they're listed for on TCG Player. And that will certainly help in your journey to become the best Brute player you can be. But till then, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you. Make sure to hit the like button down below if you haven't already. You can also subscribe to the channel for more wonderful Armory deck upgrades from somebody who doesn't know anything about these classes. And I'll go into kind of my general understanding about keeping them as, you know, pure from their out-of-the-box experience as can be, and then giving you guys updates and upgrades in regards to how the deck is better to be performed later on whenever you're going to your Armory. Because again, these decks are mainly meant for your Armory, right? Your Friday night Armory or your Saturday night Armory, whatever it might be, that is what it's there for. You go to your LGS and you play there. Can that $200 KO deck run into a ProQuest or RTN? Absolutely it can, right? If you are confident enough with the deck, you can totally bring that to a more competitive event. But at least from an Armory perspective, it is a very, very well-made deck, and I think that it holds merit to being still very consistent and not having to worry too much about any kind of misses or anything of the sort. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I appreciate any kind of criticism that I can find from here, as long as it's constructive. Don't call me an idiot, because I'll know when you're calling me an idiot. But if you're calling me an idiot and you put a heart emoji next to it, then I'll know that you're my bestie and a true Brute player. So thanks guys so much. I appreciate it. And continue having fun in the Flesh and Blood. We'll see you all at the Armory.